direction we haven't gone in yet, that kind of gets concrete about how we start having these conversations. As we are coming together in different environments as blacks and whites and Latinos, whether it be in the workplace, whether it be in a neighborhood, whether it be in a meeting, how we create a space in a whole new way so we can actually have the kind of conversation that you and I are having, to find out if we're experiencing the reality of that meeting, that neighborhood, that job. Are we experiencing that reality the same way? Mm-hmm. And that's another thing as far as the direction that I'm going in. It's how do we create those spaces where that can happen in ways that are different than the ways it happened in the past, in ways that are not blaming, mm-hmm. and the ways that suggest accountability in the way we were talking about it. We have accountability to each other as a human family, so then we have a need to understand how that human family is experiencing the same reality. Are we experiencing it the same way? And so part of what I'm trying to do is to create spaces across race, across generation, to really look at that, because whenever I've been able to do that effectively, and there's some humility in the room, and there's people that are really listening to each other, it's amazing what people learn about how they're experiencing a reality very differently. In fact, it's quite profound. You were alluding to etiquette before and what's appropriate. Mm-hmm. Okay, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and we're engaged in working in a particular community, and the community is people of African descent and Latino descent. And so we were talking about what we're doing in that community. And this was one of those kind of open conversations. And finally somebody said, well, you know, the way we're doing things is so formal and so task-oriented and so timeline-like. And you know, I'd been feeling that for a while. But again, we hadn't created the space where we could talk about it. That might seem like a simple thing, but when I'm in a situation where I can't be spontaneous and I can't flow and interact in that way, my brain literally doesn't work as well. And so when I'm in a situation that's very rigid, that's very structured, that's very task-oriented, it's like part of me shuts down. And then when I'm engaged in conversation, I feel like I can't even think right because it's so outside of how I operate, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if we had not had that conversation and allowed people the space to express how they were feeling, I think we would have just started losing people, which is what happens. Mm-hmm. We lose them physically, or we lose them emotionally, or we lose them mentally. Mm-hmm. If it's a work situation, they keep showing up at work, but you're not getting their best. Right. Because they're not allowed to express what they could possibly express. So they go along to get along, but again, you're not getting out of them what you would get out of them. So for me, part of what I'm trying to do is create spaces and comes up with the kind of questions we can ask each other so that it's not about accusing, but it's about learning. And it's about the fact that I might have a different life experience than you. And okay, so if that's true, what does that mean for how we need to move forward? Now that I know that, is it going to change anything that we do? Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that part gets down to whether it be in an institution or an individual. Do I care enough? Do I care enough that if I know you're experiencing something a certain way, that I'm willing to modify or be a part of modifying an environment so we can all experience it in a positive way? And that's where the spiritual piece comes. Mm-hmm. I got to care enough. Okay, and then we can move to the institutional piece, and we can start, if I care enough about all these black people going to prison, you know, what can I do about that on my little level? But I've got to get to that caring, and I've got to get to that consciousness. So anyway, that's where I am with this.